there's a scandal in the No campaign against The Voice. Outrage. I mean, calls even for one of the leaders of the No campaign, former Labor Minister Gary Johns, to resign for his offensive comments, to quit for, among other things, calling for blood tests for people claiming benefits for Aborigines, and to have a day celebrating intermarriages between Aborigines and non-Aborigines. There's calls from Labor for him to quit. There's even a Liberal MP who's discussed it, although it is you-know-who.
We saw that today with Mr Gary Johns, a senior leader in the No campaign, out there making extreme and offensive views. Now, they have no place in any organisation, let alone in a body that's leading the No campaign in the referendum. And I think the good people running the No campaign should have the dignity and self-respect to ask Mr Johns to step down.
Joining me is that man under fire, Gary Johns. Gary, good to see you again. Listen, you've been attacked for things you wrote in your book, The Burden of Culture, How to Dismantle the Aboriginal Industry and Give Hope to Its Victims. Are you sorry about anything you've written there?
Oh, not at all. Look, Andrew, these people don't understand. The law is that you have to prove dissent. Now, how do you measure dissent in a culture that doesn't have a written record? Often you have to prove it by blood or now a DNA test. So if you want to have a race-based system whereby you get benefits because of your ancestry, then at some stage you have to measure. What's happening at present is that people are embarrassed. They don't want to ask about the measurement. And what's happened in, say, native title, for instance, is that although Aboriginal leaders disdained for years the notion that you would test blood and DNA, in the last 10 years they've started to do it because there are those Aboriginal claimants of native title who can't prove an historic link, so they can prove it through their blood. So I'm saying nothing more than this is already the law. The big hit, though, is that I would rather none of these embarrassing discussions, because there should be no race-based programs and no race-based benefits, and then we could dispense with the whole nonsense of blood and DNA and measurement and identity.
Well, you say no more. In fact, we're getting more almost by the week. Just last week, the Albanese government, the Education Minister, Jason Clare, announced that anyone identifying as Aboriginal would be able to go to university, any university, if they had the marks, which is not a privilege afforded to people of other races. Now, that helps to explain, I think, an explosion of people claiming to be Aboriginal who are not. And that's clearly in the ABS statistics of population growth and all that. Now, the comment, though, about all this that has stirred the most outrage, let me just refer to what you actually said. You write that if the current three-part test in Aboriginality is to remain, then just as Aborigines exist in native title claims, as you just pointed out, blood will have to be measured for all benefits and jobs. I think, gee, blood tests, line up here for the blood tests. Do you really think that's necessary?
Well, it shouldn't be necessary. I mean, I think back, I won a scholarship to go to university, right? It was based on merit. I got good marks. Now, that wasn't a scholarship for working class boys, was it? It was a scholarship based on merit. So why don't we have scholarships based on merit, unemployment benefits based on merit, meaning need? If you're a single parent, you get benefits. If you want to study, you get benefits. Why should it be based on race? It's such an awful concept. But if you are going to do this, then you're going to have to measure it. You're going to have to say who is and is not an Aboriginal person. At the moment, we're too afraid to ask. And this has upset, for instance, from memory, I think it's the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, who accused Sydney University of having a number of academics on their books who are not provable of Aboriginal descent, and indeed some of the students. So Aboriginal people themselves are upset at the fact that there's an illegitimacy about all of this. My argument is we can stop the whole debate by making sure that benefits are only based on merit and need, and that we can get on with helping those poor people who need help.
Yeah, well, look, you know, this is one thing that I noticed that none of your critics today, and there were many, none of your critics actually address the issue that you're addressing, even if you don't like the blood test idea. The fact that there's actually deep anger in parts of the Aboriginal community itself to the explosion in the number of fake Aborigines. And I'm not just talking about, you know, fakes like Professor Bruce Pascoe or an academic I've identified here, or a Labor candidate in Victoria that we also discussed here. Here are some of the Aboriginal activists who have been complaining about this, in fact, on SBS last year. Have a look.
If we were to look at the census numbers, it's now projecting past 800,000. If there was to be, you know, an actual review on that and an audit on that, I would suggest, and there has been some data to suggest that it's actually probably about 300,000 less. So we've got 300,000 people here who are counting themselves amongst us. I think this is something that Australians really do need to start asking ourselves, really start looking, and am I qualified to be able? Otherwise, it's just going to erase Aboriginal persons.
I have come across many people that identify because there's a job. I have seen people being in mainstream jobs and then they found that they're Aboriginal and then they've gone into an Aboriginal role as a result of that.
So, I know of at least two activists, very prominent, saying as many as 300,000 fake Aborigines among the 800,000 we have, and taking jobs. In fact, I'm talking to an academic at the moment about why she identifies as Aboriginal when her genealogy says she's absolutely not. Shouldn't this actually be an issue, whether you agree with blood tests or not? It should be an issue. 300,000 fake Aborigines. Where are the people saying, yeah, maybe we should do something about that?
Yeah, I'm with those Aboriginal spokespersons who say we will lose credibility here if we don't test or otherwise prove that you are or are not an Aboriginal person. My way out of that is to not have any benefits based on race, and then we wouldn't have to have the discussion. But look, I agree, but you know, here's a slogan: no race-based programs by 2030. Let's work towards not having
love it. I'm signed up.
Programs.
All right, put out a petition. You got my signature.
Done.
But just before we go, Gary, there's one more thing. Also anger at you saying we should abolish welcome to country at events, and I think a lot of people are sort of saying that too. Why should I be welcomed to my own country? But you also say establishing a new day called Intermarriage Day to celebrate intermarriage between Indigenous, non-Indigenous Australians. Are you sorry for saying that?
Oh gosh, no. The dominant relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people is intermarriage, right? We're reconciled. People love each other. Race is not an issue here. We're getting on. So why don't we celebrate that? Why don't we celebrate the bringing together, the coming together of men and women getting married, partnering, and bringing up wonderful children? All of that's been forgotten. For God's sake, we've got to bring that back into the discussion. Why does the Yes case want to close down that very, very positive history between, let's call it, black and white in Australia?
Okay, so I assume from all that you are not quitting the campaign, so we shall see what we shall see about where all that goes. Gary Johns, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it.